Hello and welcome to the program. The Department of State Services has asked the Federal High Court in Abuja to prevent a former presidential candidate of the African Democratic Congress, Professor Pat Utomi, from proceeding with his alleged plans to hold rallies related to a suit pending before the court concerning his plans to establish a shadow government, which he calls the Big Ten Coalition Shadow Government. In a fresh application filed through its lawyer Akinlolu Kehinde, the DSS requested the court to restrain Utomi and his associates from making public comments or engaging in rallies concerning the proposed formation of a shadow government. Now, these actions, the DSS alleges, are intended to foment public discontent in furtherance of the establishment of a purported shadow government or cabinet. According to the DSS, the mere act of assembling a shadow cabinet comprising individuals tasked with tracking government policies, offering counter ideas and engaging citizens is an attempt to usurp executive power. They argue that it violates the Constitution, poses a national security threat and might embolden separatist groups. The DSS further argues that Pat Utomi's initiative undermines public confidence in the government. I recall that the DSS had earlier instituted a suit against Utomi before the court over his alleged plans to create a shadow government. The case seeks to have the move declared unconstitutional and an attempt to usurp the authority of the current government. Justice James Omotosho had fixed June 25 for the hearing of the case. Well, let's get an expert's view of this case. I'm joined by legal practitioner Evans Ufeli. Thank you very much for joining me, Mr. Ufeli. So as you know, the plans to form this shadow government has ruffled feathers, and now the DSS has asked the court to restrain Professor Utomi from going ahead with organizing shadow government rallies. Help us understand now the legality of a shadow government in Nigeria. To start with, does Nigeria's constitution support a shadow government?
Not really. The 1999 Constitution have no such provision under the law. The parliamentary system of government then had made provision for that, had made allowance for that to be possible. But under our current presidential system of government, which we switched to in 1979, to date, the Constitution have no such provision. But what Pat Utomi is talking about is highly being misunderstood, and it also have the propensity or capacity to be hijacked, and that's what the federal government is actually kicking against. You know, to a learned man, to an educated man, he may think he's acting based on his rights, and those organizing their rights to freedom of expression and assemblage, as predicated under Section 39 of the 1999 Constitution. Yes, you may think you are doing that to exercise your rights under the Constitution, which is okay, which is fine. But when you look at the precarious nature of Nigeria, and when you look at the fact that we're dealing with insecurity at a very high scale, and when you look at the fact that not every organization can be trusted these days, there are people, Pat Utomi may not have ulterior motive. He may be doing this altruistically, he may be doing this for the purpose of checkmating government and providing criticisms and constructive alternatives. But the people who will come after him, who will follow him, you cannot guarantee their understanding of the concept of a shadow government. You cannot, especially in a country where a lot of illiterates and bandits are out there to jump on programs and concepts they do not understand. The DSS is actually doing a good job by not necessarily going to court, but by looking at and curtailing the possible breakdown of the concept into any other issue that may not have been envisaged or contemplated by Utomi himself. Okay, I think the DSS is just doing the job of a state security service to ensure that this does not become a problem in the long run. We already have a lot in our hands. Okay, I do not support the DSS. I do not support Pat Utomi. I am indifferent on the issue under reference. But from the point of Pat Utomi, it's also been misunderstood because ordinarily, a shadow government shouldn't have been a problem because what it means is that the organization or the people in the park under a shadow government are assigned to different ministries, parastatals, and agencies of government to work closely with each of these governments, watch them closely and criticize them, and have a robust understanding of their policies, the challenges and the failures thereof, or the progress thereof, so that they can profile solution. And you understand that's what it means?
Yes.
To follow them closely and to assign different individuals to different ministry agencies and parastatals, to understand them closely so they can provide opposition and constructive criticism. That's what it means. Okay, but why that is granted? What is the guarantee that this formation will not be hijacked by people who do not understand it, who may slope into making an attempt to take over a part of the country thereof, which will amount to treason and treasonable felony? I think we must guide against that. Yes, while it is allowed, that is why the DSS went to court, because it's a civil case. The DSS went to court and then brought a fresh motion asking the court to restrain Pat Utomi from making public expression and pronouncement on the issue. Hence, it's in court. So that motion is going to be determined by the court before the substantive suit is looked into. The substantive suit is on the shadow government. The motion filed recently by the counsel to the federal government is to restrain him from making assertions, expressions, and proclamations on the shadow government concept. Okay, because the matter is in court. It's sub judice already. And because it's sub judice, parties are supposed to maintain the status quo pending the determination of the substantive suit. So the federal government counsel hasn't done anything wrong by filing that motion, because a lot of people will argue that that motion have the propensity to derogate on the citizens' rights to expression as predicated under Section 39 of the 1999 Constitution. Why that argument is granted, if you look at the Constitution too, okay, in that chapter 2, I think Section 45, talks about the fact that a right of a citizen can be temporarily suspended when there are certain issues in society, maybe a mutiny, and there's a curfew. The government declare curfew. Your right to movement can be restrained. So it's an exception to the fundamental right, but no right is absolute. And it can be suspended when there are issues of security concern in the country, such that the government will need to suspend the movement of people so that the government can get hold to the enemy of the state. Okay, so that happens a lot when you have curfew and the rest of that. So when a court gives an order that someone should be precluded from making expressions and making, that does not amount to violation of the fundamental right of the person, because it's a court order that is meant to protect society in the long run. Okay, so whilst we watch and see what comes out of this shadow government concept, it is important we bear in mind that whatever the government does or is doing on this is for security reason. Okay. And whatever Pat Utomi is also doing by talking about the shadow government is valid and legal to the extent that it is not hijacked, it is not entrenched into a means of taking over power, because the Constitution only recognizes election and all that. So it's edgy on both sides, but I think it's a fantastic concept and our laws have been developed.
Now, the government argues that a shadow government can be allowed only in a parliamentary system of government. The DSS now says the move is an attempt to usurp the authority of the current government. What do you think of this argument?
Yeah, because you call it a shadow government and it sounds like it's going to usurp the authority of the current government, but that's not what it is. That isn't what it is. This government in question also do not want any institution or person on authority to bear a semblance of what they are, meaning that the allegation is that what Utomi is doing with the shadow government is to usurp the authority of this government. I don't see it that way. But that is what the state will say. That is what the state will say. That is even why they went to court in the first place. That's what the state will say. But when you look at it deeply, what it meant, okay, from the standpoint of definition, it doesn't really mean usurping authority. Okay, it doesn't mean usurping authority. This government looks at it as insubordination and like it's creating a body, a parallel body to challenge the government. Okay, that's how the government sees it. That's how the DSS sees it. But I don't think that is what it is. That's not what it is. The government is only trying to be careful. Okay, and what Utomi is doing is not completely wrong because opposition have been silenced in this country. We don't have opposition. The political party, PDP, that's going to offer a viable opposition, have lost it. Okay, so the government is having a field day. There's no opposition. No one is really doing the hardcore opposition by a political party against the government. So it is not that Utomi and the group want to usurp the authority of this government. It's not so, even though that's a claim of the federal government.
Well, you know that Professor Utomi is not new to progressive ideas and initiatives. Now, his planned shadow government is expected to act as a watchdog to hold the government accountable. If this is allowed to stay, do you think it will impact Nigeria's democratic process and governance structure in the long run?
The coalition that we're talking about is neither here nor there. I have not seen any formidable coalition going on. There's the one that El-Rufai, because he fell out of favor of the APC. El-Rufai, Amechi, and the rest of that. Over the weekend, Amechi told Nigerians that he's hungry. And the rest in his 60th birthday. Okay. This coalition.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Pardon me. I'm still on. That was a mistake. Not a coalition now. The shadow government itself. Sorry. So the shadow government is expected to act as a watchdog to hold the government accountable. If the shadow government is allowed to stay by chance now, do you think it will impact Nigeria's democratic process and governance structure?
Yeah, of course, it will. It's just semantics. It's just because he called it shadow government.
Mm-hmm.
He could have called it any other thing and they still have the same outcome. What he's talking about is opposition. Okay. Profiling constructive criticism against the policies of government and its agencies. Okay. For them to sit up and for them to give Nigeria a better outcome. Okay, that's exactly what it is. So definitely, it would have impacted in the policies of this government in the long run. But as it stands now, nobody's really doing that job of opposition. So the government is not bothered, not worried about criticism. Because, I mean, some persons who are pushing forth for criticism and who want to see this country succeed, that is criticizing what government is doing and profiling solutions, constructive ones and all that, and could have as well been doing what Utomi is talking about. Individuals are doing it. A group can also come together and do it. But for calling the shadow government, that's where the federal government just became uneasy. Otherwise, the actions of certain organizations like SERAP and some other body, enough is enough, budgets, and this NGOs and civil society already is doing the job of a watchdog. Okay. And so the federal government of Utomi is just an addition to the plaque of already existing organizations that are doing that function, that undertaking such function. Okay, so it will impact definitely. I mean, you will hear the activities, it will be reported in the news, and you will see how this government will respond to them. Okay, already, Felix Moka, is the one responding to Utomi on several issues that have been raised already. So whether you call it shadow government, you call it opposition, you call it anything you call it, it will impact on governance and it will impact in the life of this government.
Well, we'll keep monitoring what happens over the formation of a shadow government by Professor Pat Utomi. Mr. Evans Ofeli, legal practitioner, we thank you very much for sharing your insights. We'll take a short break. The program will continue shortly. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We're still discussing moves to form a shadow government in Nigeria, and that's by Professor Patrick Utomi, and political affairs analyst Ayo Ologun joins me on the program to discuss further. Thank you very much for coming on the program, Mr. Ologun. First of all, give us your thoughts on this planned shadow government by Professor Pat Utomi. Is this a welcome development?
Well, first and foremost, it is important to clarify what a shadow government is, and it is nothing that is out of place. It is nothing undemocratic. In other democratic governance all across the world, the shadow government, what you call alternative government, is what has been acceptable norm. But unfortunately, in the case of Nigeria, it is being spearheaded and promoted by one individual. In other climes and in other regions, shadow government is often formed by opposition parties. And that is an opportunity for them to say that, look, what the government is doing is not good enough. If we are given the chance, this is how we will have handled it, this is how we will have done it, providing alternative solution, hoping that the government can tap into that and increase their efficiency. And the opposition can also latch on it to say that, look, if you give us a chance in the next election, what the government is not doing rightly, and we are giving them hints of it through shadow government, that's what we will do. So it is not undemocratic to witness shadow government, but it's often practiced by the opposition party. Having said that, I think the decision of Professor Pat Utomi as an individual to spearhead what you call shadow government at the moment is what is giving the federal government some jittery move. Given the personality of who Pat Utomi is. I can bet it with you, like I said on a few other platforms, that look, if this had been done by someone of less pedigree than a Pat Utomi, the DSS in character would have by now laid siege to the home or the office of such an individual, arrest him, arrest his accomplices, and what have you. But they know, given the background, the antecedents, and of course, the international stature of Professor Pat Utomi, they could not do what ordinarily has become the character of the DSS. Hence, they decided to approach the court. I am glad that the DSS, for one, is coming to realize what democracy is and what is the best practice in democratic tenets. Approaching the court is a good development. At least I'll be hoping that the court will do the needful without preempting them by enforcing the fundamental human rights of every Nigerian, not just Professor Pat Utomi, the right to association and the right to freedom of speech. I don't know who is thinking for the DSS. How do you approach the court to say that one individual should not grant press conference, should not be allowed to speak on radio and television stations? All of that is beneath them. These are issues that are within the rights of an individual, both to speech and to free association. But now that they have chosen to approach the court, we await the decision of the court to know exactly what the interpretation would be. But let me also say this, that it is not out of place also, even though they have not been so up and doing. It It is not out of place for the DSS to feel that an individual or an action is against national security and try to move against it. I'm not against that. I will not just throw a blanket opinion. The DSS, by the provision of the establishment, can preempt what is called breakdown of law and order or insecurity. But in this context, it has to do with human rights.
Well, the government already has critics who speak against the economic reforms implemented by President Bola Tinubu, which they say has plunged, Nigerians into more difficulty. Do you think that a shadow government will make any difference in bringing the government, on its feet now? Do you think that this will improve governance in any way?
Well, if only the Tinubu administration were listening, it should improve governance. And that is because whatever reforms, whatever plans economically, in education and security, whatever reforms or policies that the government is coming up with that is not in tandem with the aspiration of the people, the shadow government can provide alternative opinion on how such things could be done. And if it were a listening government, they can tap into such opinion of the opposition or what you call the shadow government to reevaluate their own approach in terms of policies and in terms of decisions. And that in its entirety will bring collective good to the people. But I don't think the Bola Ahmed Tinubu-led administration, by the antecedents and by what they have shown over time, to other opinion other than that which is formulated by them and pursued rigorously by them.
Well, Professor Utomi is undoubtedly a respected statesman. He says his mission is to sensitize Nigerians to what he calls citizens' duty of holding their government accountable, of following the government's opposition to his shadow government. He tweeted, that's on X now, to back away from shadowing the government to keep it accountable is a betrayal of moral obligations. What do you think of this remark?
I absolutely believe in that remark stated by Professor Pat Utomi. 2 years is enough for a government, or 4 years in its first term, to see what results their reforms will bring. So if as a citizen we've waited for 2 years and the reform seems not to be yielded in immediate fruit, it will be a betrayal of obligation, just like it's slightly stated by Professor Pat Utomi, not to give alternative opinion on how governance should be handled. And I want to sincerely believe that Professor Pat Utomi, like I have come to know, is a sincere individual who is not being used by some unscrupulous elements within the opposition party to disrupt the government. I think that's one thing that the government is afraid of. But judging by the antecedents and what Professor Pat Utomi has stood for over the time, is not an individual to be influenced by those who are against the state. Otherwise, I want to believe strongly in his opinion and his resolution to provide alternative opinion, alternative solutions to how issue of policies and governance can be handled.
Let's turn to the citizens, Nigerians. From the look of things and how they are going, is it possible that the idea of a shadow government will resonate well with them? Do you think that citizens will embrace this move?
Well, unfortunately, Nigerians over the years have put on the cloak of docility. We have become so docile, we have almost resolved to fate. That's why you see that even when there are sincere agitations, and ordinary Nigerians still cast doubts and they give this indifference about joining people who are leading such opinion. But I want to hope that sincerely, it might take time. Professor Pat Utomi should not expect that the people will embrace that move wholesomely. People have become so disenchanted. People have been limited to survival with above critical thinking. So such a decision to have a shadow government and to churn out different opinion would not immediately resonate with the people, but with persistence. I want to believe that over time, the people can see through the sincerity and they can embrace it. This is the time Nigerians need to be woken up from docility, and we must begin to ensure that we place demand on government, no matter whose ox is God.
The issue of a shadow government is still a huge topic, and we observe as things unfold. Mr. Ayologun, we do appreciate your contribution. As always, thank you very much for talking to us. And that's it on this episode of the program. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next time.